I always dreamed of making beautiful cities. But at university, those dreams and ideas were more or less squashed. What we were taught to design did not match with what I hoped to design or what intuitively felt right for me, like this is a place I would want other people to live in. And I discovered, hey, wait a minute, I'm not the only one. There's a whole ecosystem out there of people who are also saying, hey guys, we need to make nice, beautiful, livable places. We stopped trying to enter the history books with our names because we thought that history is over. But it's not. History is far from over. We're living right in it. We need urban design heroes. We need new, real city builders. Skilled designers who can crank out good designs with confidence for millions and millions of people. So in this presentation, I'm going to tell some things I wish I had known before I studied urban planning and design, and things I wish they would have taught me in school.
All right, everyone, thank you so much for coming to the beautiful Boston Public Library tonight, and welcome to today's talk on creating beautiful cities. My name is Kathleen Eustace. I'm a board member of the Institute of Classical Architecture and Art New England chapter, and I spearhead the New Vitruvians, which is the emerging professional branch of our chapter. In case you're unfamiliar, the ICAA is a nonprofit organization dedicated to promoting and preserving traditional architecture and its allied arts through a variety of educational programs across our 15 chapters nationwide. We welcome you to explore becoming a member. In the back, we have some pamphlets about our membership, and otherwise you can check out the website. We also have past editions of the ICA's annual publication, The Classicist, which we have available. I know some of you have already picked it up. Anyway, on today's lecture on creating beautiful cities, we're thrilled to announce Ruben Hanssen to Boston, all the way from Amsterdam. Ruben is the founder of The Aesthetic City, which is a content platform established in 2021 with a mission to enhance the beauty, livability, and sustainability of our built environment by sharing knowledge about urbanism and architecture. You can find The Aesthetic City on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and it also is a fabulous podcast. Ruben has a background studying urban planning at the University of Amsterdam and urbanism at the Delft University of Technology. He worked at a leading Dutch engineering firm, Wittenveen and Boss, before embarking on his mission to transform our cities through what is the aesthetic city. It's an absolute delight to have Ruben here with us in Boston. Over the past month, he's traveled extensively throughout the US for interviews and filming and whatnot. He's gone to San Diego, San Francisco, Brownsville, Texas, Seaside, Florida, Oklahoma City, Atlanta, Georgia, Newport, Rhode Island, now Boston. And then after this, he'll continue to Indiana, Kansas, New York City, and finally Washington, D.C. So it's a crazy trip, and without a doubt, we'll have much to anticipate in terms of content from the Aesthetic City. So definitely stay tuned on all his channels. But without further ado, please welcome Ruben Hanssen.
Okay. Thanks so much, Kathleen, and thank you to the New Vitruvians for hosting this event, and of course the Boston Public Library for this, well, wonderful room we're in. So happy to be here. Before I do a kind of a little introduction, well, I've already been introduced kind of, I want to start with a story. When I was in university during my master's in urbanism, I had an experience that will be kind of central to this presentation. There was a course focused on regional design, as you can see on the screen. And it was a very complex project. The goal was to make a region which was ready for climate change, globalization, and at the same time adapt to countless forces active in the region, and even international forces like globalization, for example. And as a nice little bonus to also participate all the unpredictability that the world faces. And this exercise was done in a little group. And it ended up being one of the most stressful and exhausting projects of the entire master's, far more than the design studios or even graduation. The reason was that we were mostly locked up in a room with a whiteboard where we're like endlessly debating and arguing, trying to incorporate the complexity of the entire universe in our little plan in this region. Well, the funny thing is that although it was an extensive analysis and we did our very best, it wasn't very scientific either. We just grappled with terms like globalization and climate change, and from what we knew, what we could find around to help out, one of the ugliest regions and places in the Netherlands. As you can see here, this is Lelystad, by the way. So the end result, as you might probably imagine, was kind of mediocre. I mean, we passed, of course, but the vision we produced was not very convincing, although the imagery was very polished, and we did our best, of course, to make it something. And this project is, for me, very typical of university. It was not that we didn't try, we just asked all the wrong questions. Another story I want to tell before I introduce is that this is not, that there is, of course, well, a little known place near Paris. Maybe some of you have seen it in a video, called Le Plessis-Robinson. It's a little place outside of Paris. And this town was part of one of the many banlieues of Paris, which are haunted by a lot of social problems, crime, deterioration. It was really going downhill. But this town turned around completely and went from this, what we see in this picture, to this. Crime rates were slashed. Commerce was restored spectacularly. Even biodiversity and climate resilience was restored. And the place got multiple awards, a European award, French awards for urbanism. And most of all, the residents became extremely happy. They re-elected their mayor, who was responsible for this, a couple of times. And the cities around this place, like Clamart, are now actually copying the success of Le Plessis-Robinson and copying their lessons to use it for their own municipalities. But Le Plessis-Robinson did not rely on some crazy, insane master plan that incorporated the universe's full complexity. And it also did not rely on the findings of some very fancy consultancy firm with marble floors and people drinking expensive espressos. So what did they do then? Well, it was the result of a very different kind. It was one very involved politician who knew how things worked and just knew how to get stuff done, and a very skilled urban planner who did things differently than all his peers. Well, there you have them. So the mayor on the left and the planner on the right. So what did they do? Well, they simply tried to make their town more beautiful, green, walkable, and simply a very nice place to live. And this was what made it extremely successful and had all these other effects on the city and the region. So that's a very big difference in approach. And this is what I want to start this presentation off with. This is what this presentation is basically going to be about. So before I forget, let me introduce myself quickly. My name is Ruben Hanssen. I'm 33 years old and I live in Amsterdam in Holland. And I was, as Kathleen already told, educated at the University of Amsterdam and the Technical University of Delft in urban planning and urbanism respectively. And in 2021, I left the company where I worked to found The Aesthetic City, a platform that promotes more beautiful, livable urban environments. Here, a little overview. Grew up in Leiden, by the way, in the Netherlands. Beautiful little town. Really good to visit sometime. So, before my studies, I always dreamed of making beautiful cities. I was already sketching and I love drawing. So this is like a drawing I did in high school, I think, quite early. And just going in all this detail, trying to design like Gothic churches and whatnot. And this persevered up until my master's, but it was step by step broken down because I pursued a career in urban design. But at university, those dreams and ideas were more or less squashed because what we were taught to design did not match with what I hoped to design or what intuitively felt right for me, like this is a place I would want other people to live in. So yeah, there was a big discrepancy between the places I wanted to design and what we were told to design. So yeah, to explain what happened, I want to, on university, I have another fun story to tell. So when I just moved to Delft for my master's, I first had to do a minor to kind of finish my bachelor in Amsterdam. I needed some study points, like European study points, to finish that bachelor program or undergrad program. And I had just entered the faculty, and I loved everybody drawing. You saw all the models everywhere, and there was an energy in this building which was amazing. And we had to do a group project in an area around a park in Rotterdam, like you see here. So this was a park, very modern landscape design, and it had this stark black kind of prison-like fence around it. And this was in an underprivileged area of the city as well. So I felt these are people there's a lot of people living here with problems, and they're faced with some sort of like a prison-like structure. So I felt, well, maybe we can make it a bit more charming. So that's what I proposed to my fellow students. I was like, why don't we just put some nice looking fences up there and some nice lampposts to give it a bit more dignity, let's say. But this idea didn't really go down well. I mean, it wasn't even taken serious in the first place. So, I mean, they weren't even disagreeing. They were just like scratching their heads, like, huh? This just doesn't compute. So, yeah, I started to say or think, like, was I just a romantic idiot or actually onto something rational? Because I didn't really believe that they were right. I still believe, like, I think it could really help that area. But anyway, I'll just do what the professors say. I'll just play along. So fast forward from graduation 2017 to 2021. After they had kind of broken down all my ambition to become a designer, basically, because I didn't like the direction it was going. I started The Aesthetic City because I was reading more and more. I was on Twitter quite a lot. I was, reading a lot about other urbanists and architects and what they were doing. And I discovered, hey, wait a minute, I'm not the only one. There's a whole ecosystem out there of people who are also saying, like, hey guys, we need to make nice, beautiful, livable places, and that's not a crazy thing to think. So that was kind of the thing that kind of activated me. And then I discovered that I had been gaslit for a long, long time. And yeah, I was completely fed up with, excuse my French, just the bullshit of contemporary urbanism. And well, I know there are, of course, many skilled, intelligent, and well-meaning people in modern urbanism. I mean, that's not the problem. I think, well, they mean well and they want to do the best thing. But I also dare to say that 95% of them is misled some way, and without knowing it even. And this hurts our cities more than they are helping them. Urbanism is a field that has become so academic that it has paralyzed itself. And that many designers don't know where to start or how to start a design, or even why they are designing in the first place. What is the whole goal? They just think something about, oh, climate change. Okay, yes, but it's about people as well. And I think they have lost sight of what actually works and what people really value. So in this presentation, I'm going to tell some things I wish I had known before I studied urban planning and design, and things I wish they would have taught me in school. So it's basically a presentation split in 3 parts. I will first discuss the sins of contemporary planning. Then I'll give a kind of a no-nonsense overview of 10 kind of useful principles to create beautiful and livable cities. And then finally, I'll end with an invitation to you all in this room. So, first of all, the sins of contemporary planning. First of all, there is a separation between planning, urban design, and architecture. Of course, you need to separate professions to kind of know what research falls under what. But in practice, it's not as clear that this separation is as real as we think. So in Holland we had this urbanist called J.M. de Caceres, and he said that we have to recognize that urban planning is not a part of architecture, but is thoroughly a social work based in society, founded on three extremely important social phenomena: population movement, social relations, and economic conditions. Well, whole mouthful. But are they really so disconnected? Because doesn't the design cause population movements, influence social relations, and create economic conditions as well? I believe that they are somewhat overlapping. So of course there are parts that are separate, but there are parts that are clearly overlapping as well. And we see this in practice all the time. For example, here with the Trevi Fountain, I mean, there is so many people stream towards it, but the whole design of the city of Rome and its architecture are a huge magnet for people. So population movement, check. This causes economic conditions because you have the tourism industry, check. And then you have, of course, social relations between, well, people moving there, people wanting to study there. There's so much going on there. Then you also have the negative effect, of course, pruit ego. Not sure if I pronounced it right, but spectacularly unsuccessful. It was an example in architecture, urban design, and planning concept into one. And as we know, this didn't end well because the concept didn't work and the design didn't work. So the social side also didn't work. And then, yeah, this happened. We have kind of our own pruit ego in Holland, which is the Belmermeer, and I think it might be even better, bigger. But certainly not better, because it also had a lot of problems, and it also has been demolished for the largest part. And these were all huge 10-story flats, and within 10 years there were already problems so big that they were already thinking about if they had to demolish them. And I think 30 years later, or 25 years later, maybe 30, they started demolishing the first one. So by separating planning, urban design, and architecture, the architect can blame society for the planner, or the planner, when their design fails. And the planner can blame fate or circumstance for a failing area where the design could have played a role. So, everybody's pointing to each other like, who's to blame? But I think they have to work together to see, wait, maybe everything is connected. In reality, a nice building can make or break an urban design. Good urban design depends on good architecture. And together, urban design and architecture can make or break the success of a district or city or even a region. So that's sin number one. Let's move to sin number two, and that's modernist planning ideas. I think those are mostly already out, we have already seen what the problems are and we've discussed them a lot, but I think it's still good to rehash them a little bit and look at them. So first of all, we have separation of functions, which has been catastrophic because, we have created traffic streams which were not needed, from housing to working to recreation to shopping, and we have created monofunctional, dead residential areas where nothing happens, and a lot of traffic between all these areas. We have abolished the street, and the street is one of the key pillars of community. It creates a lot of social life and opportunities for entrepreneurs to make a living, we have said, nope, the street doesn't work. We just gonna put everyone in towers, I dare even say that like a suburban street is not really a street because there's not a lot of activity, relation between the house, the building, and the street level where people are walking. Anyway, then we have tower and the park designs, putting people in towers, to give them light, air, and space, which was seen as one of the best remedies against the unhealthy industrial situations in the 19th century cities. But it was taken too far, and other aspects of human and city life were ignored, and then you get also kind of a dead and very artificial living environment. And it's not good for community either. Then you have car-centric development with, visions like Futurama by General Motors, which was basically turned into reality in Dubai. and many other cities. And then, we have dealt with this. We have already seen that it is a total disaster, and most planners already agree and are trying to move on, but not all of them have yet seen the light. Then, sin number 3, detachment from reality. I feel, and this is a really big one, this is one of the ones I was really thinking hard about when making this presentation, because this is what annoys me. Academics tend to get separated from real life and from what happens on the ground by theorizing. They get into their own silo. As you see here, they're on their ivory tower. And this happens because a lot of research is desk research, focusing on what other people wrote instead of what happens in practice or what they see in the street. So they read all these papers, often they are derivatives of other books or papers, and then those are derivatives of other papers, and then those are based on the real world. Well, I believe strongly in direct observation, common sense, and just talking to people. Just asking people what works. And we see these two kind of paradigms very strongly in, Le Corbusier versus Jane Jacobs. With the world of ideas of Le Corbusier, which are completely separated from reality, and Jane Jacobs, who lived in an area and based her book on what she literally saw every day in her life. So another way there's this detachment is how academics don't seem to be interested that much in polls and studies. Well, of course, some of these studies are a direct way of interest. So kudos for those researchers who are doing these studies. There's far too little, actually. But for example, here you see which kind of architecture people prefer. And you see that, time and again, the more traditional designs seem to be far more popular. And there should be interest in that. Why is that? So here's the UK with another winner, classical. You see the upper two designs were far more favorable. And then here the National Civic Arts Society with their big study, same thing. So that's sin number 3. And I think at least if you're an academic, aren't you supposed to be curious into what drives people to live somewhere, and also curious in what you see around you in everyday life, and not only just writing papers for your academic prestige or something. I think that's one of the key things we should wonder. Then the 4th sin is ignoring effects of architecture and urbanism on people and behavior. Because, for example, contemporary planning, I think, ignores some of the best tools we have to shape cities and improve our lives. And those are, for example, that facades really matter. So you can see here that buildings can be exactly the same height with and fulfill the same function, but a city filled with monotonous concrete blocks will have a totally different effect on people than the varied, beautiful, detailed architecture. You cannot expect that the two will do the same things to people, and people in the end form society and will do stuff. So they create our world. And then, of course, it's kind of the same as the polls and studies which were ignored. We have a lot of new research coming out now, and this is quite fresh. And we have a pioneer here in the room with us doing the eye tracking research. So really happy to see that. But I mean, we now know where people look when they are in the street. We know where their gaze goes towards, and we know what things they don't look at. We know also from brain research that there is a real aesthetic experience that is measurable in the brain. And that happens with, that differs between various things. So, this is a nice example of some of the buildings where people look at and parts of buildings people don't look at. So this should at least, this might not say everything, but it says something. It points us in a direction which we should investigate, and why is this, and how can we make sure that we use this knowledge to make better places. So planners need to be aware of this. Finally is the 5th sin, which is ignoring beauty and community. And I believe that those two are, some of the best tools we have to shape cities and to also to improve lives. Beauty is, of course, a bit of a controversial topic, but it is also something we all know. It's instinctive. We all know what we mean by beauty when someone talks about it. So if we see a gate, a beautiful view, a beautiful scene, we kind of know what is meant by that. And most people will agree on it as well. And that is already enough, I feel, to do something with it, as researchers too. So because beauty is supposed to be subjective, it is not seriously discussed in the academic world. It's not discussed in universities. And yet it is a key part of our lives, our daily lives. Isn't that important? So, and this wasn't always the case. Before, it was a self-evident fact that some objects had a property of beauty, that this could be pursued, like in the works of Camillo Sitte, Vitruvius. And we may or may not agree with this, but we just know that they did something different than we do now. And they took it serious, and their results were pretty good, I would say. So maybe there's something there. Let's at least research it, because we do know that our environment influences us. We have an environment, we perceive it with our senses, and then we process all those impulses and we get hormonal reactions, we get certain behavior. And this behavior is directly influenced by aesthetics and beauty. We cannot go around it. I mean, it determines where we want to live, where we want to stay, which hotel we want to book, who we want to bond with, what we want to buy, what brands we want to associate with, and much more. And it can be, of course, very different across all sorts of all parts of the population. And that's of course, also part of taste, but still there are patterns there, and some places will do well and will be able to ask high prices, and others not so much. So this price action is another indicator that something is going on there. And our cities and our lives also depend on it, because we know that some places attract more people than others. We know that some places more people want to live there than others. So why don't we look how we can use that knowledge to our best advantage? So this contemporary approach is responsible for our current day problems. And we see still a lot of kind of planning going on, which is either just doing something what the market demands, what is easiest, or what fashionable ideas in architecture demand. But then they completely ignore what people find nice in an environment. And I feel that in some cases you could almost say that that a lot of academics are willingly blind. They're perhaps afraid to see what happens when they choose to see, to choose to use this knowledge, because it will kind of threaten perhaps what they have worked on their whole lives. Because it's not that these planners and architects don't have access to all this information. I mean, I have access to it, they have access to it. But why are we seeing this and using it? They're just choosing not to look at it. So, concluding, there are two superpowers, and those are beauty and community, in my opinion. Because the one attracts people, and community is what makes people healthy. I mean, you know, the blue zones is basically people living in these blue zones who live far longer than average. It's not necessarily the food, it's that they have a strong community around them that can support them, like friends, laughter, drinking wine every evening under the grapevines. This is what keeps them healthy. And we need this everywhere, because we're humans, and community is one of our prime instincts. So that moves me to part 2 of this presentation, which is 10 principles for a beautiful, livable city. And I'm going to be very these are not the only principles. There's going to be more, so don't be like, oh, but what about this or that? Of course, there's going to be more. But I think with these 10 principles, these are good rules of thumb. And I believe that we need to move away from trying to encapsulate the entire complexity of the world, like I did in this project in the Masters, and just look at things that seem to work really well and use those. We need to be pragmatic if we want to solve a lot of the problems of our cities today. So there we go. First of all, I believe that traditional urban fabric is still a model that has been proven to work so well over and over and over again that we kind of still need to use it. Streets, squares, parks, in kind of a network, really work well. They form a unity. So the streets are places where a community can form and traffic can flow. Squares are places where people could have a market, a fair, or a parade, or where children can play. And parks bring nature into the city and are places where people can connect and rest. So it looks a bit like this. It's, just you have a street with also with a clear distinction between what is public, what is private. So you don't have these areas where you're not sure, am I supposed to be here? Am I trespassing, yes or no? Or is this little piece of grass is like a park, or what is it? And you have that a lot with other designs. So the alternative is basically the tower in the park, where they did away with streets, squares, and basically everything is a park, but where you're not always sure if all the park is meant to just put your towel down and to go sunbathe. So, and also this leads to excess car traffic, and small entrepreneurs will not stand a chance in such top-down centralized planning structures. So that's number one, the fabric. Number two is, well, how dense should we build? Well, gentle density is a nice term, and I think Great Streets, which is a UK firm or non-profit, uses a lot. It's basically, I think, 2 or 3 stories to 7 stories, up to a height where you can still go there by staircase, or the natural height of many trees. And above this height, you lose connection with what happens at the street level. So you go higher than 7 levels. Like if you watch from a window, you can't really recognize who is on the street anymore, because you're too far up and you can't communicate anymore. So it's kind of a human limit to how tall you can build. And yes, we can build very dense. I will come in the next slide. We can solve density in this way, but just one slide later. But combined with green courtyards, parks, and just nice street trees, this urban fabric can actually house many people, but also in a healthy and attractive way. Traffic can still be handled, and it can still be, it's still flexible. You can still adapt it. You can easily remove a building, add a couple of layers on top. Well, skyscraper is really hard to change. And it has enough density for all sorts of shops to exist, because there's enough density to, for enough clients for all these shops, patrons, and also for public transport to be viable. So this is some of the density which can be reached. And I think in Paris and Barcelona on the right-hand side, these areas are denser than most parts of New York, which is crazy. Just the amount of people living there is insane. And of course, this is not, you wouldn't want to live like this, so it's probably better to grow a little bit outwards, but it's an option to get incredibly high population densities if you want to, without a single skyscraper. Counterexamples are, of course, skyscraper cities like Vancouver or the suburban sprawl. But like we know from strong towns, suburban sprawl is not fiscally sustainable. Simply the tax base for to sustain a street, like to sustain the infrastructure, like the sewage, the streetlights, fire departments, roads, everything. You need to pay for that. Otherwise, maintenance is postponed, and you get cracks, and it starts to malfunction. And at some point, you have a whole area of the city which doesn't work anymore. And this is starting to happen right now. And it's a very scary thing because, there's a lot of suburbs, and cities are going to go bankrupt. And this is a real thing. This is a real threat. But read the Strong Towns book. They know everything about it. It's just me rehashing their story. And then, of course, you have high-rise. And, looking at, well, Vancouver, one of the problems with high-rise is that they rise the land value extremely high, leading to more expensive housing in the end rather than cheaper housing. So, because if you have an empty plot and there's skyscrapers around it, well, you're not gonna build a low little house there. The price of that plot of land is gonna skyrocket, and then you're gonna have to pay a lot for it, and you have to make very expensive apartments to pay back for it. So, high-rise is a challenge as well. So let's move on to number 3, pedestrian and cyclists first. Well, as someone living in Amsterdam, I can, of course, I know all about this. It's very, here in the United States, I've seen quite some good things already, like more cycling lanes being planned, but just to know why, it's very important to have them, to make people healthier. It increases social interaction. It can lower cost of living because you don't always need to have a car if you can just take a bike to all your locations. And it liberates children as well. You don't need a helicopter mom to drive them around everywhere. They can just go to school myself. I drove, I think, on a bike when I was like 7 years old by myself to school. No trouble, no worries. And later in high school as well, nowadays, of course, if you're a girl, they tend to go with like girlfriends, so they're safe. But it's a very common thing, and it's almost unthinkable here that you're just left alone on your bike and to go through the city. But that's actually a possibility. And of course, I think the benchmark is create places where your children can safely play on the street. And the added bonus is that it often makes cities more wheelchair accessible as well. So let's move to 4, harmonious fabric architecture. On the left, you see some experiments in Holland where they gave architects almost free rein, only with a couple of rules of like how far in the plot they could build and where not. And then you get, well, everyone doing something else. People tend to not really like that in general. But we don't like monotonous architecture either. We want some variety, but we generally want it to kind of be harmonious. And this brings us to kind of fabric architecture. Architecture which fits in the urban fabric and is respectful of the existing. And a lot of architects don't really like this. They want to stand out, they want to design, look at me, this is my building. And I believe with fabric architecture, just by doing a very good job, of course, people can glance at it, but it will not stick out like a sore tooth, sore thumb. I think that if we move back to more harmonious fabric architecture for new urban developments, that a lot of people will really appreciate it. So variety, but not too much, sameness, not too much. And of course, beautiful buildings will be kept longer, which makes them more sustainable in the end. Number 5, pleasant public spaces. Well, this is of course very important. We need nice detail, nice place to sit. This just in general improves the whole experience to a higher level. And I believe that minimalism is the beauty killer. From neuroscience, we know that people love detail. We look for edges, we look for repeating patterns of various scales or fractals. And if you see like these poles on the left, first on the right, there's just something missing on the left. And everything is so minimalistic nowadays. People crave for some interest in their visual field. Moving on, number 6, adaptation to the context. So not only does it make a place more recognizable if you use local architecture that actually refers to the place where you are, it makes it more characteristic, and it gives people a sense of where they are on the planet, not feeling lost in some anonymous place. Using local materials, local architecture, and adapting to the climate, of course, which is a big one because we're going to have a lot of different weather conditions. And for example, if you build a greenhouse in the desert, it's not going to end well, like in Dubai. You have all these glass towers, they all need AC. With a different type of architecture, you can minimize the amount of energy you need to cool your house down, or even use the wind towers, like you see in this picture. So I think there's multiple reasons why we should adapt to the context. And a lot of people actually like it as well, just visually, and it works better for livability. Of course, greenery and water. We need to cool down our cities because everything is heating up. Biodiversity is degrading. Well, it also raises the value of property. There's an opportunity for community, of course, to have gardens, city farms. People could fish, or perhaps have a great place for children to play. And this example is in Le Plessis Robinson, and they actually made it. They allowed people to fish there. So if you go there, you see actually people fishing, and you see children playing, people just strolling with a child stroller. It's a beautiful thing, and it's literally surrounded by this gentle density, nice architecture, which really works well. So build some green and water. 8. Fine grained urban fabric. Well, having more smaller plots instead of huge plots, which means that there's more opportunities for businesses. Big box stores when they leave their buildings. It's really hard to find a new occupant because often the building's far too large for just starting businesses, and then often you will see that it's not occupied for a long time. And of course, smaller plot sizes with uneven sizes means that specialty stores can often thrive, who need kind of a low rent, but really add a lot of value to a city. And of course, mom and pop stores and just starting entrepreneurs. And of course, here there you can have a larger plot, but in general, this works good for a livable kind of a town if you want to boot it up. Soft edges. The stark edges. It's kind of here you see very well that on the right-hand side, there's more places where people just feel more at home. Place where you can sit. It feels less stark and less inhospitable, like on the left. And there's a lot of examples of those places. And this is just a very simple but very effective thing. And you can actually do this retroactively as well. You can improve streets that are stark by adding some stuff that protrudes. And finally, perhaps not for livability, but actually for if you want to create a memorable urban experience, is dramatic streetscapes. I think, this one is of course, think of terminated vistas, exciting sweeping curves, interesting sequences of spaces, windy streets, and sudden discoveries. It all makes the city more, nice to live in, nice to actually to discover. And I think this is something you can get used to, and this might not be a 100% necessary, but I do believe it adds a lot of value. So far for the 10 recommendations, and I think I think they are pretty self-explanatory. Now onto an invitation, because I want to kind of involve you in this room, and there's a lot of young people here as well, because we face a lot of enormous challenges, and our planet is, filled with unsustainable buildings, many of which will actually need to be torn down within the coming 100 years. We have a biodiversity crisis. The world's urbanizing and we're taking more and more space from nature. We have enormous housing shortage. We have homeless crises, and of course emitting a lot of CO2 and polluting basically everything. And still, yet, even with this challenge, we keep building stuff that makes it worse. The nice places get more and more expensive. Well, there is no shortage of new terrible places people don't really like. And this imbalance makes things even worse. Everybody wants to live in the nice places. You get these troubles. So, we are also creating just completely inhumane environments. Just places that don't fulfill our psychological needs, and we already have an enormous mental health crisis. And this, added stress of our environment doesn't help. We need to make more livable places, also for just our well-being, because we see how this goes the wrong direction. And we need more places where people can meet and form communities, so they can live longer. Because it's a very cheap way to live longer if your family, your friends keep you healthy, instead of all these drugs and whatnot. So we need urban design heroes. We need new, real city builders, skilled designers who can crank out good designs with confidence for millions and millions of people. And we need them to be strong, we need them to be smart and studied. They need to have the vocabulary and know-how and perseverance to cut through all the bullshit that is being thrown at them. And they need to overturn a lot of outdated, ineffective zoning laws and oppose corrupted officials. Because there is so much stuff, so many problems out there. We need to be able to build, but for that we also need strong advocates. And I believe that it's time for our generation, or let's say the next generation, millennials, Generation Z, to create great planners who are able to make beautiful, attractive, and livable places for millions. So we need 21st century Jane Jacobses and Berlages, Housmans, Burnhams, and Olmsteds. Because where are they? And you can be one of those, I believe, in the public, the young people amongst us, and all the other young Vitruvians, new Vitruvians. But we need to work just as hard or harder than those earlier builders and thinkers. Because we have a bigger problem. Our populations are bigger, space is more scarce, and we have way more red tape. And I think red tape is one of the hugest battles we have to fight. We need to change regulations because there are so many regulations that just prevent all the things I just described to actually be built in the first place. And I think the peaceful, sleepy times are over in which we could just argue amongst ourselves and hide in the faculty to write some theory about a whimsical detail. It's done. So I think we need to take control now, or others will do it for us. And then we get things like on the right. There's very bleak prospects for our future, and I mean, architects are already. I mean, look at the line in the desert of Saudi Arabia. That kind of stuff is what we're facing. We're facing kind of a world that is like Blade Runner, and it might look exciting, but I don't think for a lot of people would like to grow old in such a place. We need to decide what we want. Do we want small pods for everybody to live in, or and grim, ugly buildings, or livable, humane environments that still work with big populations? And in this new age, I think we need strong young generations of people with a soft heart and warmth, but also made of steel, because it's tough. It's really tough. Planning is not easy, and especially overcoming a lot of the bullshit is not easy. So we need people with rolled up sleeves, action first. We need people who can carry the burden of an aging population, who can withstand storms of criticism, because the rest of the world hasn't moved on yet from outdated ideas. Designers who are bold, who learn rapidly, and also can outwork their peers. And who put everything on the line to make sure that our grandchildren can play in safe, attractive, and beautiful streets and communities, can also keep thriving. So I feel that in this room, perhaps there might be some of those designers, the new Burnhams, Jane Jacobses. I hope so, with all my heart. And of course, we stopped trying to enter the history books with our names because we thought that history is over. But it's not, and what's happening in Ukraine now is proof of that. Their history is far from over. We're living right in it, and so our names can still come in those history books if we don't get bombed to smithereens. So, in short, my invitation to you is to be the new generation of designers who will turn the tide and enter the history books. And I might make some nice videos, of course, but that won't cut it. I mean, what I do is a side note. We need everybody to step up their game. Thank you. Any questions? Yes.
Hi, this is my first ICAA meeting event, so I'm really excited to be here. This is an amazing first impression that I've gotten, so thank you all for being here. Your brief synopsis that you gave about your college years really registered with me too. I graduated in 2021, and it was only afterwards that I realized how gaslit I was with all these arguments about, well, what do you want to go back to the 1800s? And I say, no, I want to go back to the 12th century. But they would say these things, and it was a kind of a quiet bullying that a lot of people just weren't prepared for because they were so coddled in high school. And I guess my advice would be to fight back. But my question to you, I've done a lot of kind of retroactive fantasizing about what I would have done if I could go back. What advice would you have for somebody who's still in college who might be sitting here and, give them some advice as to how to change things around?
Very good question. I'm wondering that myself as well, because I've been like just hitting my head to the wall, like, man, I wish I could go back and kind of do it all over and see what would happen. Just because I'm kind of curious of what I would do. But my advice would be either try to change something in universities. I think first of all, find people who are like you and who have the same ideas, and that's very hard. So that's a big hurdle. Can you find people who think the same? And I think a lot of people don't come out because they're afraid. So that's the big first problem. If that doesn't work, then you can always write letters to your faculty, do something like that, and say like, hey, I want to learn this, and please, is this possible some way? And if they say no, then the next step is just to do self-study. Go to summer schools, study at the ICAA, read books, go to lectures, watch all the YouTube videos you can do. Perhaps there's courses in other places. Classic Planning Institute has a course. Do self-study, and then just get your grade, and then just once you are a registered architect, you can do your own thing.
I guess my follow-up to that, it's a good answer, but it's like, it hasn't worked because we're all here. A lot of us have the same sentiment, but we just didn't mobilize in time to change the university's mind. I mean, it seems like the only college where you can learn anything classical is Notre Dame. And they don't call it classical, they call it traditional.
Well, there is good news. So Benedictine College has now a program. The Catholic University of America has a program. I believe there is in Utah has a program as well. And in Europe, you have in Kingston University, there is by Taylor and Smith. They are teaching at one of the tracks at Kingston University. So there are some ways, but indeed, like you said, I mean, most universities are not there yet. But that's one of my goals with, well, now the audience I have with YouTube. I hope to make videos about this topic and to help students find each other, because I think it is about time for a little shake-up, let's say. Yeah.
I just wanted to add one point to that. I graduated from college 43 years ago, and I spoke in those days like you do now, and our speaker today. This is not a new battle, and it's been going on a long time. There are groups out there. There's a whole ecosystem of support for this approach, but the entrenched academic systems, the entrenched urban departments, planning, are schooled in this kind of the counter position. So we're out in the wilderness, and the more that people keep coming at it, and this talk is fantastic. It's not a new talk. This isn't like, oh, suddenly this has been going on a long time. So
yeah.
There are books, and there's an awful lot of sources. There are more places to go to learn this than the beginning of the rest of the history. And well, anyway, just putting it in context, it's whatever that.
Yeah, fully agree. And the funny thing is, I mean, most of the things I told in my presentation, most of it is just kind of it's common knowledge among traditional architects and urbanists. This is not like a very new story, but it's still a story that I think, we do have opportunity now with a wider audience, with the internet, to spread it to more people. I think that's the difference nowadays, because before you didn't have the internet. Like, you had to form these opinions by yourself, or read, or like happenstance. But like TV shows or magazines, or there was no like mainstream way you could get in touch with this information. So how would you find out a bit about traditional architecture still being practiced? Like, there was basically no way. And now there is, and you have the architecture uprising as well. But I think, I think my main frustration in this presentation was, of course, with like this academic system. And like you said, it's definitely not a new battle. It's just, I'm just the newest reincarnation or whatever. But sure, in front.
So I think I got you beat by like 5 years on the graduated from design school thing. And yes, it's going on then, it's going on now. I would urge people like yourself, people like Inbound, users of the internet, whatever, to not only try and get more traditional architecture and urban design programs going in college, but to focus on high schools.
Mhm.
Because I know, and I think many people who have told your story, and I can tell the same story,
Yeah.
didn't even realize when we were in high school and applying to design school that there was a schism and that there were different paths to follow. And so I know I just applied to the schools that had the best academic reputation on the
Mhm.
theory that my diploma from Harvard would be worth more than it would if I went to Notre Dame. Of course, back then Notre Dame didn't even have their traditional program yet. But that's how old I am. But the people in high school don't even know the questions to ask.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so they don't know that when they're looking at schools, that they should think about what it is they think an architect does, what it is they want to do, what attracted them to think that they
Mhm.
want to be in that field, and then find a school that gives them that, so that they don't just have to slog their 4 years out, get their degree, and then find
Yeah.
sympathetic professional practices. Because it takes 4 years, it actually takes longer than that. I mean, I sort of discovered it after I was out in professional practice, to really sort of realize and understand that, you take a walk in the woods, you kick over a rock, there's all these bugs and stuff crawling around, and you go, oh my God, I didn't even know that even existed. And then once you realize it exists, then you can start to find it. And I think that there's a big opportunity at the high school level to create a demand for traditional architectural study.
Yeah, definitely. We just need to decode the weird Gen Z humor so we can target it, or the Generation A nowadays. But it's really, because that's absolutely true, and because they are tricked into just into the system, and then often they're so fresh. Also, the funny thing is, in Notre Dame, most of the students coming to the graduate program, or no, the undergrad program in Notre Dame, just they don't know enough about architecture yet. That they just, this is just a university that teaches architecture, and then it turns out it's traditional. And that's with every university almost. I think that the minority of high school students knows something like that. Like they know where they're going. But how do we reach millions and millions and millions of high school kids in a way that's interesting for them, and telling them like, hey, this is another way of architecture. But because I feel that a lot of young people are actually very warm to traditional architecture. They like it. Yeah. Yes.
Hello, my name is Adam.
Hi.
Thank you so much for your presentation. It's been great. What the question that I have is, so it seems like there's going to be a lot of need for a political solution, I guess, with the zoning, with the red tape, things like that. And these things have been done successfully in Europe. And I know about this, I do have to shout this out to everybody. I actually am a co-director for a new nonprofit dedicated to making Boston more beautiful, livable, lovable, and affordable.
Nice.
It's actually a nonprofit network we just started to connect young people to get this sort of thing that happens. So I was really lucky. I was scrolling through Instagram and found this the other day. What's the name of the organization? Mayflower Institute? What's that? Yeah, find me after if you want to talk about it.
Yeah.
With those examples of successes, we're interested in getting people together for a political solution, but are there books that have been like written about the ways in which these were successful before? Like in these other places, I imagine they didn't just snap their fingers and Paris all of a sudden got more beautiful. Like there's histories on these specifically.
It has been a very, like, for example, in Paris, first this mayor who did this, he won an election that was critical. So he won from the Communist Party, which had been in power there for many, many decades. And then he had to still, work almost cunningly to get everything to be built. So first he started small with like a pilot project. You can't directly start with the whole place. You need to first show with one pilot study that it works, and then you can get people over the line. But even then, it's not always easy, because, for example, in Potsdam in Germany, where they reconstructed a lot of the buildings which were destroyed in a war and then rebuilt by the Soviets in ugly ways, they every time they do a reconstruction project, they have the same hurdles need to overcome. And every time it works, and then they build it, and then it's fantastic, and everybody loves it. And then the next project, and again, there's like the same problem. So it's very frustrating. But in Paris, there at some point it started working. But I think they had a very good developer who knew how to do this. The same in Carmel, Indiana, actually. They have Jim Brainerd, who has restored that whole place and rebuilt the center. And he is very smart at at kind of how to finance things and how to develop things. So you need political will, you need a smart development brain, let's say, next to it. And then you need, of course, some good architects. But I think it's almost more important to have the political will and the development knowledge than the architects, because the architects you can hire. But of course, we need to have enough architects who do this kind of stuff. But I think that's the right order to work.
Thank you.
Yeah, sir in front.
Comment and a question. It's a great conversation we're having. And I think to answer the first question was the fact that you're here and asking those questions. You found a resource and you're open to a sensibility. Meaning a lot of students aren't prepared even to understand these issues in this world. I'm being very general, but I teach, and it's all just understanding and learning. So the fact that you're asking the right questions is encouraging. And in terms of the second question over here, Boston has a whole history of successful and not so successful projects. There's a lot of people in this room in the ICAA who are willing to share with you or tell you a little bit about Boston's history and projects that, like the Southwest Corridor, have been very successful, and how they were structured in terms of thinking about how, it's great having this enthusiasm. I'm very optimistic about what I'm hearing from you guys in your generation, because really exciting, and there's a lot of resources here to help work with you guys. Ladies and gentlemen, to make Boston even a better place. It's a wonderful city, and so this is.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Girl, and then sir.
I have a question. Everything you said really resonated, especially about like beauty in architecture and how it's very instinctual and people tend to gravitate towards it. And I thought the example in the book outside of Paris was really interesting. But my question is, like, from a perspective of diverse cities, like, how do you, I guess, accommodate a really big range of like socioeconomic and just like big diverse group of people in a city, and specifically the issue of like affordability?
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, it was a very big challenge, or is a very big challenge in a lot of cases, because once you start building something that is nice and attractive, it will attract so many people that the price will go up and it will become like gentrified in like this. So what you need to do is somehow have like, and that's, I think in the United States it's harder than in Europe, because in Europe you have just like more stringent rules on that. Like a percentage of the houses needs to be like social housing. For example, in the Netherlands, I think it's like 30%. In Vienna, it's like 70 or so percent, or like they have like a crazy high number of social housing, and housing is very affordable in Austria, but it's absolutely hideous. But they build nothing traditional, nothing. Like you can look into our city, you won't find anything new traditional. In Germany, they're doing actually, but also in Germany, most of the projects that are really nice and traditional are actually, more high end. By Sebastian Treze, for example, fantastic architect, but it's really for high end homes. So I think we need, I think again you need some knowledge of like development to offset the costs for like the more affordable housing with the proceeds of the higher income homes. That's also what they did in Le Petit Ramazan, and they also had like social housing there. But it's tough. It's not easy, but it is necessary. But I think another thing is just build just more supply. Just increase supply. Just make sure that you build so much of it that like this price increase effect will not go up so much. But then you need to like build a lot, and that's also hard because because of all the red tape, often you can only do like piecemeal developments. I feel those are the two solutions: build a lot or offset the cost, or have some law prescribing it, and then it's like the cost is built in the project anyway, and then the developer doesn't have a choice. Certain front, yeah.
Yes, thank you. Like some of the other folks here, I've been a practicing architect for over 40 years now, but it wasn't until about 15 years ago I had the opportunity to walk the Camino de Santiago in Spain, which is a 500-mile pilgrimage across medieval Spain. You wander every evening, pretty much, through various medieval cities, and it was transformational for me to see that the scale of these wonderful places that far predated cars made such a difference in the way they felt. They weren't always all designed by great architects or even good architects, but they had a quality about them that I would recommend any young person who's entering the field to don't wait till you've been in business for 25 years to go there. It will change your life, and you bring something back. And the other thing is the power of observation. See what you like. See where you're impacted on an internal, spiritual, or deep visceral level, because you look at things, you say, I like that. What is it about that you like? And don't avoid your screen, get out there and walk. It's really a good way to go. Anyway, highly encourage anybody to do that. If anyone wants to talk to me about that, I'm a fan of the Camino de Santiago, not because of the place it is, but what it taught me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. That's a great tip, actually. Yeah, I might do it myself sometime, actually, if I have the time. Any other questions? Not seeing anything. Oh, yeah. And
you're doing an amazing trip. You just spoke at the International Banking Cities Livable Conference in Newport, Rhode Island. And you're doing a world tour around the United States. What are your thoughts?
Ooh, I've seen a lot of things. Well, of course, United States is very different from Europe. It was as I expected, kind of more or less. But the most interesting experience I had was in actually Fresno, California. I was filming a market hall designed by Christopher Alexander there, and I was at this host home, and I decided to just walk a bit along crossing one of the worst streets of that whole place, Blackstone Avenue, and it is this 10-mile long, I don't know how long, but like with only fast food stores, big box stores, strip malls, like 2 times 5 lanes, and it's horrible. And but I mean, from the car it's okay. You just go around, you just go to the In-N-Out burger, and then you go back. But if I decided to walk, and then it's a very stressful, scary, kind of lonely experience, because you're walking across the street or along the street, and there's like 5 lanes of highway just rushing across you. On the other side is just like endless strip malls, very boring architecture, just nothing going on. And then the only people you share the street with, and this might sound very terrible, are homeless, because nobody else is walking there out of free choice. Everybody is in their car. So and then you're walking up, and then someone is coming towards you, a homeless person, and you're not fully secure of if they're going to do something, if they're going to be unpredictable. So it's also a little bit scary, and then you pass them, nothing happens, okay. But then it's really a weird experience, and that's something we have roads like that in Holland, but it's not so extreme, and not like in the center of the city. So that was a very striking experience. But for the rest, I also see a lot of good things. Like you have Santana Row in San Diego, actually in San Jose. Santana Row was really, it's just a shopping center, but they applied all the right things there. You have, I think, in Atlanta, you have like the belt. What is it? The belt. Was it the? Was it Belt Road or the Belt Line? Thank you. And that's really you just see it's a pedestrianized area. You see all the new shops popping up and all the developments. You see like how it attracts people. So it works every time, even here. But you just need to make sure that it happens. Like you need a little first part, like a pilot, and then people love it, and then oh, let's extend it. And I think that's how you perhaps can do something here. Yeah, so that's I've been to Atlanta, some other trips, and I'm really looking forward to also see New York and Kansas. I mean, it's going to be interesting. Any other questions? No, then I'm gonna thank you all so much for reading.